ready, Jim?
I'm ready.
Just want to make sure you're ready, brother. Here it is. Show me the money.
All right. Welcome to the Common Sense Show. Here we are. I am hearing feedback. I think that's from your computer. So we just need to turn that down a little bit.
You hearing it from me?
I think so. And so today we have a very special guest. It's someone that I first met on Clubhouse and then on other social medias. But it seems like we've been friends for many years.
Yes.
But it's only been about a year. Right?
I would say close to 2 years now.
Close to 2 years. See, when you're good friends,
And
it
we
feels like
actually
you've been
met on
forever.
Instagram.
Instagram?
Yes.
I thought it was Clubhouse.
No. Mm-mm.
Oh, okay. Well,
wrong Kika. No.
I'm wrong. Yes, exactly. Okay. All right. Well, fair enough. Well, today we have a good one for you. Today we're going to talk about, and if you saw the theme to the podcast today, it was $500 to 14 locations. There is a reason why that was titled this way, and we're going to talk about that. A very special guest, someone who was very smart, brilliant, businesswoman, family woman, leader in her own right, and she's done it all with smile and grace, like Biggie said. I don't think he said smile and grace, but it is what it is. I have with me Kika Wise. Kika, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
No problem. So to get started, why don't you just tell the folks who are listening on the podcast or watching about yourself, and then we'll just jump right in.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here. So I'm Kika. I'm the founder and creator of Kika Stretch Studios and the Kika Method. So we're a one-on-one assisted stretching concept where you lie on a mat and our coaches stretch your entire bodies for you. So I started with one client and grew it into a national brand. Still on the journey, learning so much, and just, excited to have this story that I've created.
Awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, look, we have people who download the podcast from all over the place, all over different countries and around the country. And so your story, I'm sure, will hit someone. So I always like to start at the beginning and end at the end. What is it that made you you? Where do you come from? What's your stock? Tell me about that.
So what is it that made me me?
Yeah.
I would say that my mother had a very heavy influence in like who I am today. She was always a serial entrepreneur. I used to tell her I'm never going to be an entrepreneur. I saw the struggle and I was like, that's not for me. Here we are. But I also saw her resilience. And in my career, I've seen so many people give up. And that has never been like the first option for me. And that has a lot to do with her. So I would say my mother has really helped create the resilient person that I am, where like other people would stop. Other people would clearly have stopped at several different, points of my journey. But for some crazy reason, I never did. And that has led me to what we call success, which is really just not giving up. So I would definitely attribute my mother heavily for that.
What specific qualities in your mom did you see that made her resilient?
The I can do anything attitude, really, and really believing it, because people say that, but they don't believe it. And she has always believed it to the core, like, oh no, I am unstoppable.
Right.
And so that's one quality that I think, or I know, a lot of people do not have
Mhm.
in today's climate.
And you were what was your first? Was Kika Stretch your first business, or did you have like something else that you were doing, something that led you to create a stretching concept?
Yeah, Kika Stretch was my first business
Interesting.
ever.
Um, and so, when did you decide that you wanted to become an entrepreneur?
I had, my son was 6 months at the time. He's now about to be 13. And so I wanted to find a stable, something more stable. At the time, I was a working dancer, actor, and I just wanted something more stable, something more fulfilling. And so that's when I was like, oh, let me see about starting a business. I've been creative my whole life. I've made something from nothing, with me as an actor, branding myself, marketing myself. So now I see the direct correlation between that, being that creative person, and being a brand creator, because creativity is something you can teach it, but it just comes from the core of who you are, to truly create something long standing.
So, was the stretching concept random? How did you come up with? How did you come up with? First of all, how did you come up with the idea to start a stretching concept? And secondly, how did you get the institutional knowledge that goes along with being able to formulate a program that could stretch people that was effective?
Yeah, so I started dancing late in life, when I was like 12, 13. And so I was always stretching, always trying to get more flexible as my competition. So
Mhm.
once I was able to do that, open my body up, be flexible, I started off as a swimmer. So, my quads were locked up. I had to undo a lot of damage. Once I was able to do that and transform my body, I was like, wow, stretching is amazing. And
Mhm.
so throughout the years, I studied anatomy, different things that helped me really learn how the human body works. And I was like, wow, people are stressed out, people are angry all the time. When you finish stretching the right way, you feel like you're on cloud nine. And so I was like, I wonder if people, if they really got into how to do it the right way, if they would feel better and want to continue this journey with me, because I can show them the way. And so I just tried it. It was a thought. It wasn't proven. At the time, there were no stretch studios. It wasn't, something trending. So I just tried it. People were like, are you crazy? What are you doing? Who's going to stretch? It's so crazy. I'm like, now I wish I had all those people, all their phone numbers, so I could be like, hey, remember you said,
Yeah.
because, yeah,
No, exactly. I mean, I don't know. There, we always have our fair share of detractors, right? We've talked about that a million times on
yeah.
our Instagram live that we call Franchisers After Dark. We'll get into that in a minute. But so tell me, okay, so what defines a good stretch versus a bad stretch? What's the difference?
Yes, that is a wonderful question. So a bad stretch, let's start with that. A bad stretch is when you're really not stretching.
What does
What does
that
that
mean?
mean? What does that mean? Right.
Exactly.
The whole
Yep.
point of stretching is to release the contraction in your muscle.
Hmm.
So there's certain stretches that people do, and they're actually holding tension in their body. They're gripping their muscles, which is not stretching. So the right way to stretch is to have your body completely limp, no tension, no gripping, and just relaxing and elongating your muscles.
And so, like the assisted stretching that you all do at your studios, why is that superior to stretching on one's own?
Yes. So it's similar to a lot of things, right?
Mhm.
People hire nutritionists because they can't get the nutrition right on their own. People hire personal trainers because they can't get the results that they're looking for on their own. Therapists because
Mhm.
they can't control their mind's thoughts. And so it's
Right.
similar to that. assisted stretching helps you get to a point where you cannot get on your own. I try all the time. I'm rolling around. I'm trying to imitate my own method, and it still doesn't work. So that's what I always tell people. Like when I go to the studio and I actually have a session, there's no match of me trying to do that on my own.
Right. Now, in our previous conversations and some of the other interviews you've done, you've talked about having started your business with $500. How in the world does one start a concept with $500? What does that look like?
So, how in the world, right? So,
how in the world? How in the wide world is that possible?
Yeah, you start your LLC. What was that at the time? Less than $125.
Okay, so now you're down to $400.
Right, exactly. Bank account, that's free.
Yep.
I printed out brochures. Like I made.
That's like 30 cents a copy right there.
Oh no, it's not. I printed out brochures from. My mother used to teach at a university or college. And so I used to go to the lab and I would like be on the computer and I used to print out like so much to the point where they're like, what is going on? She kind of gave me a pass. They gave me a pass. So I actually did not pay for those brochures to be printed. So they were printed. And then the rest of the money, I shared a small, tiny little room with a real estate agent. And to help him pay that room's rent, he's like, oh, let's sublease. And so I literally had half of the little tiny room. And so that's where the rest of the money went. And I was like, okay, now I need clients. Yeah.
I can't hear you. There you go. You're back.
So I was like, yeah, now I need clients because I'm out of money. So that's when I was like, all right, let's get these people on the mat and just get started. So
how did you meet the real estate agent?
Craigslist.
Interesting. And so what did you Google on Craigslist that linked you with the real estate agent?
Nothing. It was really just you look for housing, offices, and then you see what's available. And so I happened to see that space available, and so that's why I, submitted my inquiry for that space.
Okay. And so you're in that space. He decides to sublease to you. You've almost gotten your mother fired. You've established your LLC. And now you spent the rest of the money on renting out that half a space. And now, like you said, so now I need clients. So at this point, do you have any money to put towards marketing that initial studio?
No.
So how do you get your first client?
A referral from the real estate agent who happened to refer a wonderful first client to this day. I still speak to him and reflect on the first time we met. It was a referral and he bought a package and I was like, I'm on to something. Like, clearly I'm on to something.
Right. So now you can pay your next month rent.
Exactly, yeah.
And how did you get your second and third clients?
So a lot of guerrilla marketing, really. And this is the thing, I think about it now more than often, like more than ever, I should say. There's business owners nowadays, they sit behind a computer or their storefront or their desk and they wait for people to come in. And you have to put in some sweat equity until you're at a point where you're at break even. Now you can start hiring people. But the problem is so many business owners just sit there and expect things to happen without them doing anything. So early on, I knew that I had to make this happen. That's always been, my state of mind. I have to make it happen first before I rely on any employee to do it for me. So I would get out there, guerrilla market, pass out flyers, stand outside, pass out brochures. I did all of that and people were like, oh, and people came and people started, hearing about it, picking up brochures. Oh, I have a brochure. Can I come? Sure. That's how it started.
It's whenever I speak to business owners and people who have done really important things and big things for themselves, when they become more sophisticated, they often forget how they started. And so to tap back into what you did at the beginning is so important for people who are trying to start a business. And the reason for that is because that roadmap oftentimes defines whether a person is going to actually get into business or not get into it. It's the defining factor of whether or not they can actually do it from the beginning or not. And so, when we kind of reduce how we've started back to these small steps that seem both complicated and uncertain, but now you realize what you were doing that actually worked. It really helps to kind of bring back the love of kind of what you were doing, even if it was hard at the time. Now, were you
Yeah,
married or single when you started?
I was single.
You were single, so you're
Yeah, I
also
was single.
by yourself now, so you have to make it work. And so,
Mm.
when was it time to choose your first location?
You mean after sharing the space?
Yeah, your own
Yeah.
individual
So
location.
then I started getting clientele very soon.
Mm-hmm.
And he did not expect it to really be a business. And I'm still friends with him on like LinkedIn and Facebook, and I
Mm-hmm.
always talk about him. And I wonder, like, does he know I'm talking? But I
Maybe I don't
started
know. Maybe he
getting
listens to this podcast.
I
We'll
started
see.
getting clients, and he was like, "Whoa, you're using the space too much." Because so I'm like, that isn't that the whole point? Oh, you slept on me, as people often have. Um, and so he's like, "I'm not renewing your lease," and I'm like, that was my first like devastating moment in business.
Right.
I don't have where am I going to go? So I went back on Craigslist
Mm-hmm.
and I found another space in the same town. It worked out. But that's definitely a moment where the first time I would like a, oh, you know what moment, as a business owner, like, oh, I have to figure out something right now.
Right.
So
How much time did you have?
how much time? I really don't remember, but it was not a lot. It was definitely less than 30 days.
Less than 30 days.
Definitely less than 30 days.
That is pretty drastic, shall we say, on the
Yeah.
simple level, especially when the person has committed to subleasing to you and then they pull the plug and they give you less than 30 days. 30 days is not a lot of time, but less than 30 days is even less. But you made it work. You went and found um, another spot, and so you moved there. And then what happened to your business at that point?
So at that point, I was in another space, small space, not a storefront, but at that point, I was able to build my business to six figures and in space that was not ideal. So then I was like, oh my God, now I can move to a storefront. And so I took another chance moving to a storefront. But the thing is, I always budgeted. I always made sure that the moves that I was going to make would pay off. And I took very little baby steps, small baby steps.
Mm-hmm.
Now I throw myself out there and take big risks, but
Yep.
I took baby steps because I was still hearing, oh, what are you doing? Who wants to stretch? So I was like, I'm listening to my own voice, which has always been stronger, but I'm like, why are people saying this?
Right.
Maybe there's some truth. So I
Yeah.
baby steps, and then those baby steps, every time it worked out, I was like, oh, and I built more confidence. One of my first clients was Bobbi Brown of Bobbi Brown Cosmetics.
Mm-hmm.
She walked
Everyone's
in.
thinking Bobby Brown of the Whitney Bobby.
No, I wish no.
Yeah. Right.
And so she was like, "Is this a franchise?" And all I had was like a table, a flower pot, a mat. She saw the whole vision. After that, everybody else's voice was like, "Goodbye. I don't like." This is all that she gets it. So
Mm-hmm.
it boosted my confidence.
There's always that client that has business sense that can see beyond kind of where you are, and
Yes.
you learn to appreciate those folks. How did you build from where you were when you moved into that second space to six figures? What was the catalyst in that growth?
It was me putting in the sweat equity. It was all me. I was doing everything. I was and as you start to hire staff, you have to replicate elements of you that made it a success. That's
Right.
that's a gem. If anybody gets that,
Mhm.
that's how you delegate. And so it was me. It was the owner, the person whose skin was in the game, the person who needed this to be a success. So I did the work. Like I did all of the work. I worked really hard. People saw, like I sold everyone, which of course, as the owner, you're gonna sell. You're not gonna
Mhm.
be like, all right, bye. No,
Right.
you really need this. So I just built a strong foundation and really educated people as to why they needed the service.
Yep.
And that's how it built. It just built off of, people feeling what it felt like, the
Mhm.
truth, relationships, people wanting to come back, all of that stuff that we desire.
Sure. And so they they say that you can hustle to your first six figures, but beyond that, you need systems and processes in order to grow. What so were you unsure? So after you had grown out of that initial space where you were sharing it with the other guy, um, is it fair to say that that's when you realized that you had captured kind of something in people's attention about stretching that
Yeah,
work?
definitely. That's when the local press would start to pick up stories about what I was doing. That's when,
Right.
oh wow, people are really like, and they were still questioning it, like, I don't know, this girl's doing this. It seems cool, but I don't know. That's always like the end. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
But it helped
Exactly.
nonetheless, locally saturating the market.
Yeah. And so you move to this space and then you build it to six figures. Now it's time to move to an actual storefront. So now you move to a storefront because here you are. You are making the climb up the ladder. And so what was that like?
I mean, right. I mean, I have goals within the next 2 years, like right
Mhm.
now. So I still feel like I'm still making that same climb. I have not arrived yet at all. It's such a journey. So many things um, that I've learned and need to do. So I feel like I'm still there in the climb. But the beginning of the climb was amazing. Uh, I started hiring staff,
Mhm.
not having any experience with what to look for, just knowing what I needed to be done.
Yep.
So, over the course of some years, I really mastered the art of finding staff that wanted to work with me and were good at what they were doing. So, that took some time. And because I experienced crafting that early on, it's really helped now where I'm like in 5 seconds, yep, bring her on, bring him
Mhm.
on, whatever. Whereas before, I would bring people on like, why did I do this?
Right.
So that was the first system I really started to create, like staffing. What does that look like? What is the profile? And so it was a climb, many obstacles along the way,
How did
but I just kept
first?
overcoming them.
How did you know who to hire first?
I didn't.
And so who did you hire first? Who was your first hire?
Who was my first hire? It
Was it a
was
stretching
someone.
coach?
It was a personal trainer. She was actually a personal trainer, and so I taught her the method. Like I had someone come and
Mhm.
take pictures of every move that I did with her, and I was
Right.
like, "Oh, this is the manual. This is the method. I have to copyright this," and I
Right.
did.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I started creating the systems as I needed help.
Interesting. And when did you start hiring for like administrative help?
It's all a blur. It was not until I would say like 2 years in, maybe 3 years in.
So for you, it was more important to have the professional help than the administrative help because you wanted to get out of doing. Were you still at that time still stretching every day?
I was. So I was stretching. I would hear the phone ring. I would get like
Mhm.
an email alert, like, oh my God, I want to answer the email. I want to see who's calling, but I'm like stretching someone. I'm like,
Right.
clearly I can't do with all of this. So
Right.
that's why, yeah, I fired myself first as the actual practitioner.
Hmm.
So I could attend to the administrative aspect. And then I was like, let me see what happens if I bring someone on because my whole thing is, and I tell everyone, it's so important to fire yourself from your business so it thrives without you. But so many people don't do that. Or some people fire themselves too soon when they haven't done any work. Like, what do you
Right.
do? How are you fired already? You didn't do it. So,
Yeah.
so that's
True.
kind of how the natural progression went.
And so here you are, you're hiring people now. You are hiring administrative people. You're kind of trying to slowly get out the rat race. How long did it what was that transition period like for you to go from stretching every day to all right, now I don't have to stretch at all? Did it and the second part of that question is what did you do when people were like, "No, it says Kika stretch on the door and I'm not getting Kika, so how do I know I'm stretching with a person who can do what she does? Because clearly she's the only one that knows this method because she's Kika and this is Kika stretch. So how did you make the clean break and how did you break it to your members?
Yeah. So there was, so once I decided to like fire myself, I didn't give myself a grace period. I had an admin person, like I said, I brought them on. But then I was like, all right, I want you to take on even more work, more hours, and I just fired myself. And for the first month or so, I was like, why did I do that? The cost, as we all know, of administrative help, like what was I could do this myself. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
almost talking myself out of it. But then I started to see, oh, I'm starting to profit more by taking myself out of it. Like, how is that
Mm-hmm.
possible? And
Yeah, how is that possible?
that's what
Explain it.
happened. Hmm.
Explain how it was possible.
Listen, right, when we try to do too many things, we wind up doing nothing. So
Right.
everybody has to stay in their own lane, and if you're focusing on somebody else's lane, you're gonna do a very vague job of what you should be. So it's really just that. It's not because I was special, not because I was different, but because I started to read and learn about the power of staying in your own lane, which I
Mm-hmm.
have to remind myself now. Like when I feel like I'm too overwhelmed, I'm like, what am I doing that I shouldn't be doing? So it's like a
Right.
constant juggle. Um, so yeah, that's ideally what happened. And then when clients would say, "Oh, but I want you," I had to say, "Listen, I trained this person." And I always told, like, expressed how it's because of growth that I have to do this. I want to
Right.
grow this, and they respected that.
Mm. And so, but maybe it was because you were special and different, clearly,
Well,
because
clearly,
of what's happened to the company. Because, um, you know, you're good at selling your brand, what you do, and those things. Um, did that factor into your equation to kind of focus on growth? Were you still talking to Bobby Brown of the cosmetic company at this time, consulting with her?
no, I was not consulting with her. I had a few clients who I would say kind of talked to me and like gave me ideas. And
Mm-hmm.
so at that time, I didn't have any. Well, I had people who wanted to consult me, and I'd be like, "What? But what have you done?" Like,
Right.
some people start a consulting business, and they're just like they just do consulting. But what? So I was always wary of just trusting anyone because I
Mm-hmm.
knew if I let the wrong people in, it would not be good. So I just took pieces here, pieces there, put it together, read a lot, watched podcasts, went to
Mm-hmm.
workshops. And I have to express this again, even with franchising, right? When we get these franchise owners, it's so important to still educate yourself as a business owner, because if you come from corporate America, if you come from anywhere else, it takes to run a business. So you have to educate yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So was it time to add another location to the business?
Say that again.
When was it time to add another location to the business? How did you know
When was the
it was
time?
time? Yeah, like your
People
second
started
location, going from one to
people
two.
started asking, "Oh, is it here? Is it there?" And then Union County, I live in New Jersey.
Mhm.
People kept asking for a studio there, so I was like, huh. It's so funny. Brian Kemp, I think that's his name, the founder of Uggs.
Mhm.
They had a workshop or workshop, and he was speaking at it for free. And since this was years ago, I've never seen any other type of event like this before in my life for free. But it was for like the chamber, and he came, the founder of Uggs, and he spoke about his story. And I was on the edge, like, should I sign this second lease? Should I not?
Right.
After hearing his story, I went up to him and I was like, listen, thank you. So, like, his story, wild, crazy, so inspiring. And I was like, thank you. I'm signing a lease right after this. And he was like, really? I'm like, yeah. And it gave me the power to move forward. So it's really important to surround yourself by people who will lift you up and steer you in a positive direction, because
Right.
if it wasn't for him, I probably would have been too afraid to sign another lease.
I have to ask the obvious question. What was it that he said that made you say, I have to sign another lease?
Okay, I'm going to try to make this short.
Yep.
Well,
You don't have to. This is a podcast, for goodness
we
sake.
have time. So he started Uggs with a best friend. They were from Australia. They always wore like sheepskin boots. It was like a thing there.
Right.
So he moved to Southern California. He said, I want to bring a piece of home with me here. So he's like, the boots. And people were like, the surfers always wore these boots for some reason. So he's like, the boots. And people were like, you live in Southern California. Who's going to wear boots, sheep, lamb, whatever, boots like that? It's too hot. And so he's like, no, I think I'm onto something. Again, I think I'm onto something. And so he took his last, I don't know how much money, very, very small amount, him and his best friend. They made these little boots. They brought them to Southern California. They shopped around all the surfing shops. Like, hey, these are great for surfing. After you finish, put them on. Do you want them? And everybody was like, oh my God, this is a great idea. Every surf shop, this is amazing. You're brilliant. So he took all his money. He ordered these boots. He brought them back to the shops. And they were like, dude, we just said it was a great idea. We didn't want to buy them. And so he lost all of his money, devastated. What am I going to do? So they found one of the most popular surf kids at the time in Southern California out, and they put the boots on him for like a magazine ad. And then people were like, oh, I want those. And that's kind of how his story started. Long story short, his partner and himself were excited. We're about to get bought out. So they signed this agreement. And then he calls the next day like, hey, I'm calling to speak to whatever. And they were like, I'm sorry, we can't transfer your call. He's like, what are you talking about? He signed himself out of his own deal. He didn't read the contract. He didn't get legal advice early on. It's inspiring me now, even talking about it. Right. And they basically said, well, you are now in the marketing department. We're going to pay you this salary. But his partner, they gave him the lead with everything. So he had a moment where he went home to his wife. He was crawling on the floor. Like, that's how depressed. It's not funny. He was crawling on the floor. Yep. And she's like, get your up. And he got up. And at that moment, he was like, all right, I love marketing. I don't really like scaling a business. I love marketing. So maybe I'm in the right position. He did well with marketing. He did amazing, exciting. He was in one of his houses at some point, and it caught on fire. And he was so depressed. He just lied on the ground, and he was like, I'm done. And he said he heard a voice that said, get up. And literally, get up. He got up. He's like, fine, I'll keep going. This is the end of the story, and the best part. Well, not the best part, because it's sad. His friend, who was the leading force in the business, passed away. Now, this is like 30 years into the business, right? He's in the marketing. He passed away, goes to his funeral. His wife is like, listen, I can't handle the company. I can't deal with it. I want to give it back to you. So 30 years later, now he is finally the CEO of Uggs.
Company that he started.
A company that he started. Then he was able to scale it, finish doing what he was doing, and he sold it. But I say it like that story is so incredible to me because we look for instant gratification. If it doesn't happen in a year, if it doesn't happen in 5 years, and then we're like, well, I'm out. It's not working. And here you have a story of somebody who got what was theirs, had it taken from them, and got it back 30 years later. And is a multi-billionaire, million, I don't even know. But the whole point is like, if you really want it, you better stay on the journey or else somebody else is going to take it.
And so how did that inspire you to open your second location? What specifically was about the story?
This man was in a burning building. His whole company was taken. He kept going. Why am I afraid to sign a lease? Like, who am I to be afraid to sign a lease? And that's kind of what made me sign it.
Right. That's cool. I like that story. It's actually an excellent story.
It's amazing. Yeah.
I'm glad that you told the whole thing and you didn't just skimp on it.
I didn't know. I didn't want to,
No, it's all good. So, okay. And so here you are now with 2 locations. So now what is it like going from, so we've kind of slowly built your history. What is it like going from running 1 location to 2?
It was too much. I'm also a mother. I was a mother, still am a mother.
You're like, burn down my house.
I like being a mother. I love being a mother. So I was like, this is taking up too much of my time with my children. I need to figure out how I can be a great mother and a great business owner. So I started researching and I was like, oh, okay, franchising. Everybody's like, don't franchise, it's horrible. But
it costs too much. You never get franchising. Most people never get past 1 or 2 locations, the whole shebang.
Exactly.
You heard it all.
Again, the haters. So I looked into that and I was like, I've already gone through the toughest part, proving that it can be successful. So now if I teach other people how to be successful and grind the way I grind, they will be successful. So that's when I was like, let me franchise because I can still get this out to people without having to do it all myself. Right.
And that's how you were able to get to your 14 locations or to add the other 12. Yes. I assume is through franchising. Exactly. So it is funny because one of the things I'll say that I appreciate about what you do is that you bring your kids everywhere you go, pretty much. And you're always on the airplane, obviously, because you have the locations that you have to visit. But, for the most part, I see that the kids are a lot of times, probably not during school, but, generally speaking, like during the summer when they were off and you were off, they're kind of with you. They're kind of observing how you work. And, that's pretty impressive. And I think that's a really important trait. It kind of harkens back to your life, watching your mother grind and, seeing kind of what she did. And so how does your mom feel about all your success now with the 14 locations and everything you've built?
Yeah, I mean, she's always been my biggest cheerleader. She always has my best interest at heart. So sometimes she's very motherly, like, just relax and, lay down, take a nap. I'm like, no, I can't. Like, you don't understand. I have to keep going. But she's my biggest fan. She's been the one who's always believed in me. And she's like, she thinks it's amazing. She also goes around to the studios and she hears what the clients say. Wow, this has changed my life. I feel so amazing. And she's like, she comes home, like, you would never believe what this client said. And she tells me all these testimonies. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that means the most to me. Like, amazing.
Yeah, sure.
And it's funny, I'm going to LA on Sunday and my son is like, I'm going to miss you when you're gone. I'm telling him, like, I spent, like, some trips I have to go on by myself. But I'm always, I always come back. So it's just funny because you're like, oh, yeah, you take your kids into him. I don't take him enough.
Right. Well, I think that kids get used to and enjoy time around their parents to the extent where they're doing different things than their peer group are doing, right? So like you have these kids and first of all, not everyone is an entrepreneur. And then of course, not everyone's parents are entrepreneurs, even a smaller pool. And then not everyone's parents are successful entrepreneurs, and then even smaller. And then even smaller than that are successful entrepreneurial parents who actually have, businesses that they control in multiple locations. So like, like you become in like the 1% of entrepreneurs who are doing what you're doing. So, and kids, I think kids get used to that. They see it, they get used to it, and it's something that I think that they enjoy kind of getting their hands in there, as well. Tell me about what it's like to build the brand, and have brand recognition, because I just experienced this, by the way, with a franchisee candidate. I was emailing them. They're coming down the pipeline right now. Hopefully he's not listening to this and changes his mind because of this, but coming down the pipeline. And so he has it down to our franchise and another one. Right. And it's interesting that he's doing this debate. Fair enough. They all do. And so I've been talking to him for a couple months, and he sent me an email back yesterday saying that he was going over the options with his son. And his son had heard about my concept. In fact, to the point where his son was explaining to him about my concept and the competitors. And so I had no choice but to email him back. I'm like, I'm proud of that. That is awesome. Even if you don't sign as a franchisee, you're in a completely different state, 1,200 miles away, and your people are telling you about this concept. And maybe that's the concept.
How old is his son?
Probably in his 20s. This franchise candidate is late 50s, I think. So,
nice.
But that to me is that, if for no other reason, brand recognition, that's important. So tell me about having your name. What was the choice to keep your name, Kika Stretch, versus making it something outside of you?
Yeah, that's a whole long story. We'll have to do part 2. But the real decision was made when I spoke to Bobbi Brown, and I'm looking at all her products, and it's like Bobbi Brown. And then there was a woman that has a big hair care line, Jane Carter. And I met her, and I'm like, Jane Carter. And I'm like, people are always going to try to steal what it is that you're doing, but they can't steal my name. I am who I am. So I know you're going to try to imitate it, steal it, create your own version, but what you can't take is me. So let me put my name on it so people know that this is my creation, no matter what.
Remember forever.
That's right. That's a clip from the Titans. I do these drops all the time in the podcast, but that is a scene from Remember the Titans where he's like, they will remember forever the night they played the Titans. But that's the point of your name, right?
I mean, look, I have competitors now, and people are like, Kika. Oh, Kika. Yeah, I don't care. Yeah, I'm Kika. Like, no matter what, I'm always Kika.
Right, exactly. That was good. Your face, by the way, when that clip played was hysterical.
Hilarious. Right.
But that's the point. Is remember the name. It has to have that brand appeal. The thing I like about your name, like my brand, is that it's one word. And where do you stretch? I stretch here. One word, short word. What does it mean? And for you, it means a founder. For me, it means something different. But like, that, those kind of singular words that don't really exist in the business ether are really important for brand recognition long term. And it's what gets investors gets investors' ears kind of up, that unique sense of what you're doing, even if the concept is similar. They just want something that can be branded in the marketplace. Yeah, exactly. That might have legs.
Exactly. And Kika was always my nickname. And I used to hate when my mother called me Kika, because it's usually like, Kika, like I'm doing something wrong. Get up, Kika. And I used to tell her, please don't call me Kika, please. And now she can't get enough. She's laughing like, aha, who was the first person to call you Kika? I'm like, okay.
Yeah, she's responsible for the brand. So,
according to my son, he is. He's like, I own your business because I started in an effort to take care of him. So he thinks that it's all his, if you ask him.
That's hilarious. Oh, just a little digression. This has nothing to do with anything. So I was out this morning and I turned the corner, and then I was about to walk through these exit doors of this building I was in. There was a woman behind the front desk and a woman sitting in chairs in the lobby, and they were talking across the walking path. And you know what they were talking about?
What?
They were talking about Mercury being in retrograde as I was walking through. At the same time, the same day that I had this podcast with you, and I was thinking, I was like, I got to tell Kika about this when I see her later. But
Nothing happens by accident.
I didn't say anything about it being in retrograde. I almost said that you all's bodies are mostly water, 80%, 90% water, to which they would have responded, I don't know what you're talking about.
No, they would have been like, wow, he's one of us. But I don't want to divert. But yes, is it in retrograde right
I have
now?
no idea. As you know, I don't follow.
I hope it's not, but okay. Need a break.
So what has the business of franchising been like for you?
It's been my greatest learning, or my greatest teacher. It has taught me about myself. It has taught me about people.
Mm-hmm.
It has taught me about leadership. It has just been like mind-blowing on so many different levels. Scaling, it's been, 10 years ago, people were like, did you go to Harvard or Yale? I forgot when I just started. I'm like, why? Because do you have to go to a school like this to come up with something like this? No.
Mm-hmm.
But this has been like, this is beyond grad school. This is like, I'm getting my doctorate right now in life.
Yeah, for sure. And so what's maybe like, give two of your top learning lessons of the business of franchising?
Whew, two of my top learning lessons.
Yeah.
I may need a minute. Let's see.
Take as much time as you want in the next 2 minutes.
Make it really good, right? Number one. My biggest, in order to successfully run a business, and this is like choosing candidates, like, you're going through candidates. It doesn't, degrees. Oh, I've been in corporate America my whole life. I have this amount of money. I have this amount of assets. None of it matters if the person does not have grit. So if you are looking for candidates, trying to find people to be a part of your organization, my best piece of advice would be like, tell me a story of when you had to use your grit to get over an obstacle. Tell me about all the obstacles in your life that you want to reveal, and tell me how you overcame them. So if someone's like, oh no, life has been easy, like, what are you talking about? They're not going to survive a pandemic where you have to shut down for 3 months. You have to restructure. No amount of money, unless it's endless and you just want to waste money, that'll help you. But if you don't have the grit to really overcome and also teach yourself constantly, you won't survive. So grit, you have to have grit. My other lesson would be, I've learned so much about having employees, how to care for employees without losing yourself or without being a tyrant, how to properly care for employees so it's a mutual beneficial relationship. That has been my second biggest learning lesson, because without employees, there's no business.
Yeah. And how many members does the Kika system have across all locations?
Excuse me, sir. Can't talk about that on this. I knew you were going to ask one of those questions. Well, we have many different locations, so it all depends on what you're asking, where you're asking, what type of membership. Things like that.
Yeah. So for all those, if you're watching or listening to this, there are certain things that. So if Kika wasn't a franchisor, she could tell me right off the bat about that stuff on this podcast, and I would not relent. I would continue to ask her and beat her down until she told me, because it's not about the revenue. I just want to know how many people are engaging in the service.
Yes.
However, when you become a franchisor, you are subject to the Federal Trade Commission because they oversee franchising in the United States. And so there are certain things, if you haven't disclosed them, that you cannot say to the public about your system. However, there is a caveat that does not include talking to the media or people who are not actually buying franchises. So theoretically, in an interview, you could say it. But franchisors are often more discreet when it comes to that, and smaller franchisors in particular. So
Exactly.
I respect it. Her not being able to say it, but technically she wouldn't get in trouble if she said it. Still, I'm just throwing that out there. But anyways, I'll move on.
Sorry.
How much time do you spend on the road these days?
Few days out of each month, not
Okay.
not too much. Um, Again, I spend most of my time making sure everyone's trained so that I don't have to always be there, and I shouldn't
Right.
always have to be there because if the systems are set up correctly, which sometimes I have to alter, sometimes I have to enhance. Um, and these are adults, these are well trained individuals, they can keep it going. But I do have constant contact with my managers and my top level employees. But traveling a few times a month,
Yeah.
a few
Yeah.
days out of the month.
I always like seeing you're like always in these meetings. Every time I text you, you're like, "Oh, I'm in another meeting. I'm in another meeting." I'm like, "Man, there's not that many meetings in a week. Ain't nobody need to do all that, man." But apparently there is. So, any so the again, so your story is inspiring on multiple levels. Um, you are a success by many measures, and your story going from a less than $500 starting the business, the free, almost getting your mom fired from university, flyers aside, the $500 you started your business with to now being open in 14 locations. What is an inspiring thought or message that you can give to people who are looking to break out and get started, who have limited resources?
Yeah, I would say really find what is your why? What is your why? Because if your why is, I want to make money, I want to travel the world, that's not a good why. And as the pandemic comes, inflation, your why will not be strong enough for you to overcome because that's like money is a tool. It's not, it shouldn't be the ultimate goal. You'll be
Right.
disappointed and you'll quit. So as long as your why is strong, so strong that no matter what, a hurricane, anything happens, like you're still going to keep going, you'll be able to successfully operate and own a business. And people think it's easy. Even with franchising, it's easier. You have the franchisor to guide you, help you, but you
Mhm.
still have to put in some work. And if you skip over that and you just, oh, well, I have staff, I can pay my staff. Your staff needs a leader. And if
Yeah.
you are not the leader, who's going to lead them?
Hmm.
So really understand why you're trying to do this and make sure it's worth the journey of being a business owner because it's not easy and it's a beautiful journey and the best life I would ever want to live, but it's not easy. So just really ask yourself, what do you truly want out of life? Then make your decision.
Yeah, I posted something on Instagram about a month ago that said leadership is the problem, and leadership is also the solution to the problem. And it's true. Like you can't abdicate that if you choose. Once you choose to be a leader, you're a leader all the way. There's this type of leadership that's out there called servant leadership. Has a lot to do with kind of getting out there and kind of being in the trenches, kind of slinging the mud with your fellow workers, with your employees or whatever. I'm not a big fan of that concept. I think I've mentioned this many times. I
Yeah,
think leaders lead. That's what leaders do. They lead from the front and they inspire people to want to become leaders and they show them the way that leadership works, but they do it by being out front, not by being in the trenches with them. It doesn't mean that you treat a person in the trenches like they're in the trenches, right? You treat them like they are aspiring leaders, and that's a different skill set altogether. Um, so yeah, so I appreciate that. I appreciate that thought. I think that's really important, and it's why I'm writing my book right now. Um, that kind of addresses all this early stage entrepreneurial stuff because there's a big gap between what people think entrepreneurship is and what it actually is and what is involved and what it takes. But the first chapter in the book is calculating life because that's um, you know, you have to figure that piece out before you can figure out anything else.
absolutely.
So Kika, where can people find you?
Kika Stretch Studios with an S.com. I'm also on Instagram, Kika I am, and then you'll see all my other links there. Book a session, even though Micah, you still have to come and have a session.
I do.
Book a session, look me up, follow me, and just follow my journey. 2
I was-
years to a big milestone. So just see what happens.
I'm excited for it. I was invited to your opening of your Calabasas, California location 24 hours before it opened. So thank you for that late invitation.
VIP access, right?
I was thinking, so this invitation is nice. Wish I had it a month ago, but it was nice. It was still nice of her to invite me out there. I wish I could have gone because I wanted to see this much ballyhooed space that took forever to get permitting for. But I would have been excited to actually come.
California is quite a state. That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
Right. You know, people say if you could make it in New York, no. If you could make it in California, you can make it anywhere.
Oh my goodness. California is, it's so funny because I've done business coaching. I tell people all the time, like, make it easy for people to do business with you, and they will. California is not one of those states. It's like,
nope.
So I think that the state wants no one to do business in that state, like, at all.
Yeah, pretty much. They're like, open up a business, and then they're like, get out, close.
Yeah, exactly.
Playing with my emotions, right?
So I will say one thing before before we end. I did see an article today about how the Dallas Dallas mayor is trying to really push franchising in the city of Dallas. I was just in Dallas a week ago giving a presentation, and it is a massive. That city, oh my goodness, is huge. That city could have so many franchises in it and not cannibalize a single one of them because of how big it is.
Yep.
It is insane. My Uber was like $30 on average just to go anywhere because of how far it is. It's really, really that big. And so, Dallas is an interesting territory, I think, for both of our concepts.
It is. So, I saw the same article.
Did you?
I did.
What did you think about it?
A lot. Did you read the whole article?
I did.
I put the whole picture of what they're trying to get done. We'll talk offline, but I think it's a great initiative. I'm like, wow, yeah. Why isn't every city doing that? Every major city. But yeah, I thought it was a lot in that one article, and I was like, wow, this is great.
Yeah, for sure. Well, from Kika's humble beginnings at the back of someone's office who kicked her out in 12 days because she was making too many waves with her appointments, to now 14 locations, Kika is certainly an inspiration to all of us because she is conquering and continues to conquer and has big plans to grow even in the future. Kika, thank you for being a guest today. And if you're out there listening to this on the podcast, don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to do the YouTube things, like and subscribe, share with people that you know if you like this story. Follow us, share, subscribe. And if you have any questions about business, entrepreneurship, small business, if you're a small business owner, you can email info@thecommonsensepodcast.com or tweet at me dog, Sense Podcast, @Sense Podcast. That's like dollars and I will respond and I'll even read them on the show. All right, that's it. Don't forget, if you don't go to work building your dreams, you're going to go to work building the dreams of others. Until next time, I'll talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.